I've always had a vivid imagination, but this dream unsettled me. It was wild and...
Alan Wake. Yeah, there's a lot that can be said about this game. A lot. And I fall onto the side of individuals who do not like Alan Wake. I've played this game, I've finished this game. For whatever reason, I kind of convinced myself that maybe it was just me. Maybe I wasn't in the right frame of mind to play it at the time, and I just didn't enjoy it because of that. Maybe I was mad that I paid, you know, £35 for it, or whatever the release price was. And I didn't feel I got my money's worth. So eventually I bought the DLC as well, which was on offer every Christmas. As a sort of last-ditch effort to see what I could get out of it, and the DLC had reviewed quite well. So I thought, perhaps this will turn me round. But ultimately it didn't. And, well, pretty much here's why. Now, I'm not going to break down the game as a standard review will, because you can see the IGN reviews, the GameSpot reviews, game trailers, and all that, and I watched all those before recording this. So basically, I'm not covering the same ground that they did in either a positive or a negative perspective. This game to me reminds me a lot of Assassin's Creed 1. And a couple of years ago, you might remember, Remedy, the guys that made Max Payne 1 and Max Payne 2, they announced this game called Alan Wake. And eventually at E3, it might have been like 2009, I honestly can't remember at this point. Well, maybe 2008 in fact, but they put out this absolutely stunning trailer, which demonstrated the game's real-time weather effects and lighting, and it's just this engine. It looked incredible, and no one had a goddamn clue as to what kind of game it was. You assumed it was a third-person shooter in the style of Max Payne, where it's, again, style being the key word there, where it's sort of a variant on that gameplay type of being cool and being able to kick ass, just have a good time, and just have a real sense of style to it. Ultimately, as time went by, you know, that once stunning trailer, I mean, it remains stunning, it still looks good now, you go back and watch it. But, you know, it took about 2 years for this game to come out, so technology and rival titles had caught up by then. So it wasn't as mind-blowing as perhaps when it first was shown. And as it turned out, Alan Wake was a survival horror game, to a degree. So yeah, it comes out, and why I say the parallel with Assassin's Creed is, Assassin's Creed, before that game came out, I don't know if you guys remember, and I'm talking about the first one here, they showed you a ton of footage, and it was all very choppy, it was all very selective, to the extent that you kind of looked at it and second-guessed yourself and thought, is this gameplay or is this a cutscene? But either way, you knew it was in-engine, so you were kind of still pretty excited about the game, I know I was. And ultimately, when Assassin's Creed came out, they had built this amazing engine with fantastic graphics. And you had these NPCs all over the screen, you could climb any building, da-da-da-da-da, it was absolutely incredible. You know, I'm buying it. And funnily enough, I didn't buy it. Because when the reviews came in, it turned out that the problem with that game was, and also this problem carried through to some other modern games, obviously Alan Wake and Bad Company, Battlefield Bad Company, is that they built this wonderful technology and then basically did not build a stellar game to go on top of that, to complement that technology. They built a boring game. Assassin's Creed, you can do about 3 things, and they just feel so detached from that world, and it's boring as fucking hell. Assassin's Creed had the luxury of, they made a sequel, Assassin's Creed 2, and it's absolutely fantastic. And so's Brotherhood. Because they built the technology for the first game, and then they were able to effectively take the focus away from the tech and just build a good game with solid gameplay from the ground up, really good experience for the sequels. Alan Wake falls into that exact same ditch. Alan Wake looks absolutely brilliant. The lighting and fog effects are just flawless. From a technical standpoint, the game is it's a marvel. It honestly is. It's incredible. And I don't think you'll find a better example of real-time lighting anywhere else on this generation of consoles, certainly. And again, from an artistic standpoint, it looks amazing. It's I want to use the word photorealistic, but it's very realism-based, very realistic-looking visuals. And again, it's up there with the best titles of its generation, which is fantastic. But you know, being a survival horror, it's gonna go a bit kooky and crazy, and thus it doesn't maintain that. And that's not really a flaw. That's just the way it is. You know, you want to evoke horror, you've got to go paranormal, and obviously those things aren't real, so you lose some realism. My issue with this game is that instead of going paranormal when it does, the game just goes batshit insane, and just not in a good way. I mean, the issue with it is, honestly, like I say, the technology's there, but it's the gameplay that lets it down. You start off the game, you basically meet one enemy type, and you know, it's like Resident Evil 4, only just really, really dull. Basically, you have to shine your torch on them to effectively break their shield, and then you can headshot them with your gun, which sounds cool. Controls are a little bit clunky, it's kind of strange on the aim, there's a weird snap to, you think would snap to headshots, but doesn't always do that. But again, you know, I can get around messy controls. The issue with it is, you've got the same enemy types, and I'm talking one, with different character models, like a tall guy, a short guy, maybe the tall guy's got a chainsaw, I can't even remember at this point. But it's just repetitive to the point that I was sick of that game. Like, I was so wrapped up in the atmosphere, I really wanted to enjoy this. By the end of it, I just turned on some music in the background, and I just couldn't give a damn. Because the environments, although they look incredible at first, they're the same throughout. It's just woods. You get a couple of other things thrown in there. But ultimately, it's just everything about this game, other than its visual style, is dull. The combat is repetitive, it's boring, it's dull to begin with, and it's so overused, it's just shocking. You know, expecting a Max Payne game from this was the right thing to do. But the thing about Max Payne is, you know, that's a 10-year-old game, and it shows it. If you play Max Payne now, the controls are kind of twitchy, it feels rough around the edges, like when you're jumping and those weird sort of platforming sections, the nightmare sections it had, they all feel kind of busted and out of date. Okay, and you know, that's what happens when a game's 10 years old. But when you play Alan Wake, it feels like no time has passed. Literally, they've got the technology for these graphics, but the gameplay is exactly the same. All the same hitches, all the same hang-ups. It's just unbelievable. There are platforming sections in it. This game is not built to accommodate platforming. It's that simple. You hit the jump button, it's never even consistent. He doesn't jump a consistent height. There might not be a lot in it, but there's a movement lag as well, and it's just absolutely the pits. And platforming is just not something this game should attempt. And ultimately, for whatever reason, they do attempt it several times, and each time you're just going to jump into oblivion and get really aggravated with it. You know, the other thing about this is, maybe what carried me through it is, with a survival horror game, it's all about the build-up. And they constantly build and build and build, and then ultimately at the end you've got your payoff. In Alan Wake, there is no payoff. It's the same throughout the game. You know, you can get... I mean, the story is interesting, but it doesn't... I'd say the themes it raises are interesting, but its actual delivery is convoluted and just dull. Again, it just... You know, they try and sort of mindfuck you too much, and it reaches a point where maybe even they don't know what they're saying. Maybe they're throwing so much bullshit in here to make it seem really in-depth and twisted and interesting that, you know, they lost the plot themselves. By the time you reach the end, you know, this game does offer an ending, if you can call it that, but ultimately it's a cliffhanger, and even that is just like a kick in the nuts. I mean, how many years have you waited for this game? So again, one of the biggest fundamental flaws is this game's lack of delivery. Like I say, the combat does not evolve. You get new weapons, I think there's about 4, and you get free flashlights, so you basically shine brighter, so it gives you a larger radius of light to break down the enemy's shields. Later in the game, you see these black misty clouds of evil, and what that basically means is the game will now throw inanimate objects at you, such as cars, tractors, and whatever. So you end up fighting tractors and all this kind of thing. But it's ultimately the same. You dodge, shine your torch, and they're dead. There's no variation. It doesn't evolve at any point throughout the game. You know, the skills that you have to get through Chapter 1 are the exact same skills that you would use to get through the final chapter. And that's just... It's just sad. In this day and age, there's no evolution in such a big, sort of hyped-up title like this. And like I say, with reference to survival horror and most appropriately, the one game you can compare this with, I'd say, is Silent Hill, and especially Silent Hill 2. Now, Silent Hill's got clunky controls, Silent Hill doesn't have platforming, thank God. Has combat that's okay but not great, but it relies mostly on its atmosphere, and those games build a brilliant atmosphere. But the thing is, you can have an emotional investment with their characters, because they feature fantastic stories, and they craft them in such a way that you're intrigued, and you really want to know what happens next. Alan Wake just throws you red herring after red herring, and I just, eventually you just don't care anymore. It doesn't feel like the story is progressing. It feels like a game is increasing its length, just for the sake of, obviously, being an 8-hour experience or whatever. And again, with Silent Hill, you get the emotional payoff at the end. Okay, so you're really interested, you really get to know these characters and the world, and then you have an ending, an actual ending, where something happens, and that's your payoff. People have complained about Silent Hill in the past that it builds this atmosphere of fear, and you're constantly on edge, and by the time you complete the game, you sort of look back and think, well, nothing really jumped out and got me. There was no big, giant, terrifying enemy at the end, it was just atmosphere. And maybe that is a negative quality, but I like that because, like I say, you've got the satisfaction of the story, and I'm also on edge all the time because of the atmosphere it creates. Alan Wake does not provide those things.